Welcome to episode 21 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on November 22nd, 2019. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about Loch Ness Knit Fest, what I did, what I said, what I saw. I'll share an interview with Christel Seyfarth and share a review of her book Fanøstrik, give some actual details about the knit-along coming on January 1st, 2020, and more. Always more. I have a couple of giveaways going on right now. One, you'll remember from last episode, is a Dorset button kit from Tania Ashton-Jones. To enter that one, you need to leave a comment on one or more of the social media posts for episode 20. So head over to Instagram, Facebook, or Ravelry and find that post for episode 20 and leave your comment by November 29th. And the winner will be announced in episode 22. The other giveaway is for a set of stitch markers in the podcast colors. So you all know that I used to have a little side business making and selling stitch markers. I'm actually almost out of all my leftover stock from that business. When I went on my trip to Scotland, I punched a hole in the top corner of my podcast business cards and attached a stitch marker to it and handed those out to people I met in classes or at other events. And that used up almost all of my old stock. It's really mentally freeing to have those almost all gone. I've been looking at my bead stash with renewed interest. I made some stitch markers in the Harriet's hat colors for the MRI Mackers to sell at their various craft show appearances, and it occurred to me that I had the right colors to make some in my podcast colors too, so I did. I gave them out to friends and people who had had a big hand in making my Scotland trip happen, and I ended up with one set left over. So, this last set is being offered as a giveaway. To enter, go to the website, IthoughtIKnewHow.familypodcasts.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and you will see that I now have a form where you can sign up for my mailing list. Sign up there by December 25th, 2019, and I will pick someone from the mailing list to win this last set of stitch markers. I'm going to stop now, a little early in the podcast, and give you a moment to go enter those two giveaways. Find the social media post for episode 20 and leave a comment, and go to IthoughtIKnewHow.familypodcasts.com to sign up at the bottom of the page for the mailing list. You'll have quite a few minutes to do both. This is a longer song. It's over 4 minutes long. It's called The Fish and the Bird, and it's a song about star-crossed lovers by Brandon Turner, performed by Angela Easterling from her album Beguiler.
I gave my heart to a silver-winged bird. Thought he'd give me everything he couldn't return, and all that he gave may have been all that he had. Never was enough to keep me on dry land. Me, I am the fish, and my home's below the waves. No matter how I wish, I swear I'm bound to stay. My head ain't in the clouds, so I can plainly fish and the bird. That was you and me. Sunlight on the water goes dancing with the tide. Saw my silver bird starting to take flight back to his home, far beyond the sandy shore. is my friend. Here beneath the waves of the world that I live in, fish and the bird never could have been. 'Cause here beneath the waves of my blue oblivion, fish and the bird never be again.
I'm going to play for you an interview I did with Christel Seyfarth at Loch Ness Knit Fest. She's a designer who lives in Denmark and designs beautiful colorwork pieces with bold patterns, drawing on the inspiration from the native costumes and the scenery of Fanø, which is a small island off the west coast of Denmark. Christel and her husband host the Fanø International Knit Fest, which is the weekend before Shetland Wool Week every year, and we are starting to plan ahead in the hopes of attending both in 2020. Please enjoy the interview with Christel, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Christel Seyfarth, who is a knitwear designer, and she's exhibiting here at Loch Ness Knit Fest. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Well, you're so welcome. I was looking forward to it.
Thank you. The first thing I always like to ask people in these interviews is how you learned how to knit.
Well, I learned to knit when I was 5 years old by my grandmother. And I must say, I've never put down the needles ever since. My grandmother, she could barely knit, but she taught me how to cast on and knit a stitch and purl row, and then I took over from there.
So did she continue to teach you, or did you have to seek out other teachers?
Well, she didn't know anything more, so I had to, I actually learned it by myself. So I was I was looking at other people, other knitters, how they were doing, and so I copied them and figured out my own stuff as I went along.
That's very resourceful for a young person. So we're here today at Loch Ness Knit Fest. We just found a corner next to your booth, and I'd like to talk to you about what you've been doing here. So I know the other day you hosted a knitting evening. How did that go?
Oh, that went very well. It's always nice to be with knitters, first of all, but being given the opportunity to tell people how I knit and my inspiration sources and my techniques is always fun. So I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for agreeing to do that for us here on the podcast, too. You have your own booth here. Do you want to tell us what sorts of things you bring with you when you come to festivals?
I only do color work. So my signature is lots of colors and lots of patterns. That's the only thing I do, really. So I would never bring anything in just plain knitting because I don't do that. So it's always patterns, lots of it.
And the fashion show earlier was beautiful. You have a lot of shawl designs with really large motifs on them of birds and flowers. There was a lovely knit dress also. Where do you draw your inspiration from when you're designing?
I live on the westernmost island of Denmark, and we have a very, very rich culture, and that includes costumes and dances and music. So I look a lot at the costumes, and I'm very inspired by that. But also, we are a sailors' island, so all the stories coming back. I come from a sailors' family. All the stories about the big world out there has always inspired me very much. So I think my imagination is quite good. So I picture things in my head. It ends up in a pattern somehow, yes.
Now you have a book here with you called Fanøstrik, and I was looking at it. There's 11 patterns, and it's in both Danish and English. And it's kind of a unique book in that you have some stories involved with it.
Yes, I'd like to tell people where exactly my inspiration source comes from each model. And the storytelling also adds to knitting. When you knit it, you would have the feeling that I had when I designed it. So I think it's always nice to know the background for something.
As you're designing, do you have a preference for a certain type of yarn to work with?
I only work with one quality of yarn, and that is a Scottish lamb's wool. If you come to my shop, you will see I have about 150 colors on the shelves in big cones, and I never knit with anything else. First of all, the quality is fabulous, and the colors are fabulous. And since I do a lot of color work where I need the colors to sort of blend into each other, I need colors very close to each other. So what my wool does is it has this melange colorway, which is just perfect for blending for me.
I know that you have your shop on Fanø, and you also host a knitting festival there every year. Is it always in September?
It's always the third weekend in September. So next year will be 17th till 19th September.
Can you let us know the types of classes and experiences that people can expect if they make that trip?
Well, first of all, you have to set your mind to coming to an island. And for many people, that gives you a great creativity that you wouldn't have if you were on the mainland. We have about 15,000 people coming in on the island. We have our cultural histories blended with the festival, actually. So you will see lots of costumes and dances and music. But we have about 100 stands and big fashion shows and very, very many musical events. So it's like you are being entertained with all kinds of things while you're knitting. And we have the island is placed in 2 different towns on the island. So you take the bus and you drive by the beach from one location to the other. Do not only get the knitting thing and all that, you get so much more. So people stay there for a lot longer than just a weekend.
Now, I know it's an island in Denmark and it's European. So most of my listeners obviously are English speakers. Is that a problem for the English speaking community to come to Fanø for the festival?
Absolutely not. We are an international island and everyone in Denmark speaks both German and English. So, and if we don't speak other languages, the knitting language is universal. So that's no problem.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time away from your booth, which is a very popular booth here at Loch Ness Knit Fest, to talk to my listeners tonight. So good luck with the rest of the festival and thank you.
I thank you very much. Thank you.
I am sorry that this was such a brief interview. I would have loved to have sat down longer with Christel, but it was a very busy weekend for both of us. Christel is actually involved in the planning and execution of Loch Ness Knit Fest, so her time was dear, and we weren't able to connect until late in the festival, and I just pulled her into a corner in the marketplace to record. Luckily, my editing software was able to remove most of the background noises, but as I was leaving, Christel very kindly gave me a signed copy of her book, Fanøstrik, Beyond the Horizon. There are very few pattern books out there that I think a non-knitter would find actual value from, but this is one of them. Let me give you the nitty-gritty details first. Fanøstrik is spelled Fanøstrik, and it means Fanø knitting. It's a hardcover book with 11 patterns conveyed in both English and Danish. It was published in 2017 by Clematis Press, and as of this recording, it's not available on the US Amazon, though if you Google, you'll find the Woolly Thistle has it in stock at the moment, or you can order it directly from ChrystelSeyfarth.com. Or if you would like to just knit 1 or 2 of the patterns and you'd like to buy a kit instead of the book, you can get those directly from Christel's website as well. Back to the book though. It's split into 2 sections. The second section is all the directions and charts for the patterns. The left side of the page is the Danish instructions in black, and the right side has the English instructions in a deep red. And then at the end of that section, she has information about her wool, blending colors, steeking, and a little bit more. The first section of the book, though, is the gallery, and you might think that that's just going to be photos of the samples, but it's much more than that. Each pattern gets several photos in a different setting on Fanø, in different styles of homes, inside, outside, and then there's also a half-page or so blurb about the pattern that includes some information and history about Fanø itself, the culture of the past, the culture of the present, and how they continue to intersect with one another. This is the sort of pattern book that comfortably doubles as a coffee table book and would easily hold someone's interest regardless of whether they knit. I have been massively in love with Christel's shawl patterns for several years now, and I think I'm going to put the Gale and maybe the Roses and Thorn onto my to-knit list for 2020. Thank you again, Christel, for stepping away from your booth to chat for a few minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you one more time about my crazy plan for a Christmas present for my grown-up nieces and nephews. I am getting them a 4-month family supply of Drops detergent. Why would I do this? Because I'm that kind of aunt. I should say I'm not just getting them this. I'll get them either a gift certificate or something I knit for them as well. But Drops detergent, I think, is a perfect Christmas gift for young people in their early 20s who are learning how to adult. And, you know, sometimes money's tight and sometimes doing chores are annoying. But a year's supply of Drops detergent, which is, I think, what a 4-month family supply would work out to be, will keep them covered and not having to worry about that one thing this year. Why are young people going to like this kind of detergent? It uses no plastics. It comes shipped in recyclable cardboard containers. It actually works. It has reduced water usage, and there's nothing in the product that doesn't need to be in the product to get the job done. When I was a young mother, I was making my own laundry detergent because I didn't want to be contributing to pollution issues and plastic use issues. But the problem with that was it really didn't work, especially for my husband's shirts. They came out of the laundry still stinky, and I'd have to run them through again. And really, I just gave up on that and went back to using regular detergent. So I'm really glad that I found this Drops detergent that works so well and has about as clean an environmental record as you can have and still be an effective detergent. So I think that my nieces and nephews are going to appreciate this gift. And it might solidify in their minds that I am their crazy aunt, but I am willing to take that on. If you would like to support the podcast and give Drops a try and maybe be the crazy aunt or uncle yourself, the web address is tinyurl.com/drops. That's drops with 2 P's. tinyurl.com/DROPPS. You'll get $10 off your first purchase, and they'll send me a little bit of money to help pay for the podcast. That's tinyurl.com/DROPPS. All right, let's get into Loch Ness Knit Fest. You guys, it really was so much fun. I know I said that already in the last episode, but it really, really was a great time. They haven't announced the dates for 2020 yet, but I'm really hoping it lines up well with Fanø and Shetland so that I can hit it again next year. And here's the thing. I did stuff at this festival. I gave a talk on Saturday morning about knitting podcasts and interviewed Billy Middleton of the MRI Mackers in the afternoon. And even with all the nerves from doing that, I still had a blast. It was a very positive, happy place to spend a few days at the end of a very long trip away from home. And getting to see some friends I'd made earlier in the trip made it feel like a bit of a farewell weekend. So I told you about the classes last time. I'm going to tell you about the more social aspects of Loch Ness Knit Fest this time. Thursday morning is when the classes started, and then Thursday night there was a gathering with Christel Seyfarth, and I didn't actually get a chance to go to that myself, but several of my friends did and said it was a really enjoyable time. They spoke glowingly of Christel and the information that she shared and the joyful atmosphere of the event, so I'm really kicking myself for not going to that. Friday, there were classes again, and the marketplace opened with some main stage speakers and fashion shows and local dancers and musicians. They had some really top-notch speakers like Shona Mason of Shona Mason Makes and Dr. Zoe Fletcher, also known as the Woolist. And then that night was the Highland Feast. Now, on my first trip to Scotland, I'd done 2 Highland feasts, and both times we were packed into massive rooms along very long tables, and the food was good, but we got like a bite of haggis after the haggis ceremony, and everything was cleared away pretty quickly, and then it went on to the program of music and dancing, and it was fine, but they were clearly events designed for tourists to be able to say they had the experience. The Highland Feast at Loch Ness Knit Fest felt much more intimate. We were seated at round tables so we could chat with more people. We had elbow room. The host, Willie Cameron, was much more interactive and personal with the audience. He was a great host and storyteller. Spud the Piper played the pipes beautifully. And after toasting the haggis, where they bring the haggis out on a platter and Mr. Cameron recited Robert Burns's address to a haggis, they gave us time to eat and enjoy each other's company for a while before they launched into the program. It felt like we were actually being welcomed to Scotland by the organizers rather than just observing a performance. But there was a performance. After we ate, some Highland dancers from the Cheryl Heggie School of Dance performed, with Mr. Cameron giving us the background information about the specific dances before each one. It really was a lovely evening. The next day, I had my main stage talks. In the first one, I gave the whys and wherefores of knitting podcasts, which basically I think boils down to the desire all humans have to feel like they have a community of people that understands and supports them. A lot of us don't have a local knit club, or maybe we do, but we love the sense of being part of the worldwide knitting community and not just the one in our little corner of the world. And then I gave a list of some of my favorite knitting podcasts to get people started, and we had a quick little question and answer time at the end. It all went well. I didn't trip or faint or struggle with my words too much. So I was quite relieved and very grateful to all the people who came over to listen while I spoke. Later in the day, I interviewed Billy Middleton, Harriet's son, about the MRI Mackers and the work they've been doing to help raise funds for the MRI Scanner Appeal. We showed the video from the Scanner Appeal website about how Harriet started knitting things to sell from her own stash to raise funds, and then we talked about how it snowballed from there. If any of you are new to the podcast, in the last few episodes, I interviewed Harriet herself while I was in Shetland and released that in episode 15. So you can go back and listen to her tell her own story herself. But she wasn't able to make the trip down to Inverness to speak there. So we had Billy, who handles all the social media for the MRI Mackers, as well as a lot of their logistical planning. And he did a great interview. And rumor has it that there is some footage of that. So if I can get my hands on it and the audio is good enough, I'll post it. After the interview, there was a steady stream of people visiting the MRI Mackers booth to buy patterns, so that was really heartening to see. You know, people hear about this and they want to help, and they step forward and they do. It's been great. That night, there was a concert out at BogBain Farm, which is a bit of a drive out of town, but they provided a bus for those who needed it. The gathering place at the farm was an old stone barn that had been converted into a venue. You arrived to a parking lot in the pitch black, and you know there's a building there, but you just have the lights leading to the door and what's reflecting off part of the building, so you don't really know what you're about to step into. It felt very mysterious and magical. You walk into a bar area that is big enough that you can breathe, but small enough that you feel encouraged to be sociable with your fellow concertgoers. And then off to the side is a large room full of chairs and old church pews with a stage at the front and fairy lights along the ceiling. It was a dreamy sort of space that matched the tone of the concert. The singer was a woman named Hannah Rarity. She was BBC Radio Scotland's Young Traditional Musician of the Year for 2018. I'll put a link to her website in the show notes, but it's hannahRarity.com. And I want to apologize. I feel like I dropped the ball on this one because her voice was beautiful. I bought the album as I left, and I've been listening to it in the car because it's the only place I have a CD player anymore. She has a wonderfully emotive voice, and the songs on her album are gorgeous. But if I'd thought about it ahead of time, I would have contacted her agency about licensing a song for the podcast. So I really do apologize that I'm not bringing you her music directly. But you can find her on Spotify and Apple Music and SoundCloud. So I'll put some links in the show notes. Do go find her. The next day was Sunday, and I needed to be heading home. There was an all-day excursion planned for the Isle of Skye, and I really wanted to go. I have several friends who live on Skye, and I've heard it is gorgeous, but it would have been tight getting to the airport afterward, and I didn't want to risk it. And while I waffled back and forth about whether to risk it, the trip filled up. So the decision was made for me. But next year I'm going to plan my flights better so that I can see the festival out completely, because it was such a joyful experience that I'm really looking forward to next year, and I want to make sure to take complete advantage of what's being offered. So if it's not obvious, plans are in the works to return next year. Details are still being finalized by the organizers, so the date hasn't been announced yet, and once I know what it is, I'll be sure to share. I believe they are moving the venue for next year, so I'm looking forward to experiencing how that will enhance the event. Personally, I think this is the perfect yarn event to travel for. Inverness is a lovely little city with everything you need. There's a wide variety of housing options, from a few luxury hotels to small bed and breakfasts. You can easily make it a week or two trip and use Inverness either as a home base the entire time, with day trips out of the city to see different historical sites like Culloden and quite a few castles and museums, or start and end your trip by driving the Highland 500, which takes you all around the northern coast of Scotland, or spend a few days in Inverness for the festival and then pick a location elsewhere to use as a home base for the rest of your stay. There is a book that came out right after I got home from this trip that would be a big help with your planning if you want to extend the fiber craftiness of your trip. It's called The Highland Yarn Guide by Dwynwen Hopcroft. And I do apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. She's also known as Loch Ness Knitting. I ordered my copy from Amazon as soon as I learned it existed. It's brilliantly organized as a series of drives. And the various fiber crafters and shops and events that you can find along those routes are mapped out for you. It was only $7 for the paperback version, and you'll easily save that much in your time trying to hunt down all of those people on your own. So if you are thinking of making the trip to Loch Ness Knit Fest, be sure to get yourself a copy. If you think you may want to make the trip and have any questions, let me know, and I'll help out if I can. I have only been once, so I may just point you to someone who should be able to help you out, but I'm happy to share what I do know. I'm going to slide into another song here. This is another one by Doug Hoyer. I played you one of his songs way back in episode 9. He writes songs in one of my favorite genres, the quirky but sweet. And his song Tattoo is no exception. I hope you like it.
Is the part of your body that you cannot tattoo, but I have a fear that mine is being marked by you. If I got a religious symbol tattooed on my back, would it be sacrilegious if I itched and scratched? So if you wanna know why I'll never get a tattoo, it's 'cause I've been saving every inch of my body for you. I've been saving every inch of my body for you. Yeah, if you wanna know why I'll never get a tattoo, it's 'cause I've been saving every inch of my body for you.
A few more things before I go. Actually, quite a few things this week. First of all, I will be making an appearance at Vogue Knitting Live at the Morehouse Farm booth sometime on January 18th, which is the Saturday. It will be sometime in the afternoon, but the time hasn't been settled yet, so I'll let you know when I know. But if you will be there, I would love to meet you, and I'll probably have stitch markers to hand out to listeners, so be sure to come by and say hi. And while you're there, take the chance to smush the Morehouse yarn. It is divine. Second, I was hoping to do an episode next week and then go back to the every other week format. But as I mapped that out, initially, I forgot about Thanksgiving. Oops. So next episode will be the start of going back to releasing episodes every other week. It is quite a time commitment to compile these episodes, and I found some ways to streamline the process, but it still takes about 12 hours of work for each one. And with all the stuff that gets crammed into the end of every year, I just can't keep it up. So we will go back to every other week. But that said, be sure to go over to ithoughtIknewhow.familypodcasts.com and sign up for the mailing list at the bottom of the page. Not only will you be signed up to possibly win a set of stitch markers if you do it by December 25th. But my plan is to put out a newsletter on the weeks that I don't release an episode, and that will start in 2020. And it will keep you informed of some off-week online events that I plan to host. I'm still working out the details on those, but go get on the mailing list so you hear about them as soon as I know. Finally, at the start of this episode, I promised you the details on the knit-along. I actually asked whether you all were interested in one a few episodes back and got some positive responses. And then another podcaster who had just heard about my show reached out and said, "Hi, I'm a new listener and also a podcaster. Want to do a knit along together?" And I laughed because the episode had released maybe 2 days before, but she hadn't actually caught up to that point. So she didn't know I was planning on a knit-along for January. So clearly we are meant to have a knit-along. My original thinking went out the window. Well, not out the window. It's going on the back burner. I'd like to do a knit-along every quarter. So my original idea will be shifted to the spring or summer instead because this knit-along is really perfect for winter. So maybe I should stop rambling and actually tell you about it. This knit-along is going to be run by me and by Jana, the host of Purl Together, which is a video podcast on YouTube. I'll have a link to her channel on the show notes, but you can also just hop over to YouTube and search for Purl Together. She has episodes of her podcast as well as videos from past knit-alongs and instructional videos. Hop over there and start getting acquainted with her. The knit-along is going to start January 1st, 2020 and will run all month long. It will be for any of the Harriet's collection patterns. So I'm pretty thrilled about that. You know me, I've been talking about Harriet's hat since this summer, so I'm really excited to be co-hosting this knit-along. You can pick any of the patterns to knit to be part of the knit-along. There is a hat, headband, fingerless gloves, mittens, or cowl. And of course, the 4-pound price of the pattern sold by the MRI Mackers goes right to the MRI Scanner Appeal, which is the charity working to raise £1.65 million for an MRI scanner for Shetland to save residents from the 12 to 16-hour ferry ride to Aberdeen when they are ill, injured, or just plain scared. That ferry is not necessarily a smooth ride either. It's the North Sea, and the crossing is often rough. Recently, the overall appeal reached the point where they have raised 1/3 of the funds they need, and a sizable portion of that came through the efforts of the MRI Mackers and knitters around the world. We're going to do our bit to see if we can bring in another good chunk of donations to the cause. If you have never knit Fair Isle before, this is the knit-along to join. We are going to be producing instructional videos to help you with your technique along the way. Those will go up on either Jana's YouTube channel or my own, depending on which one of us filmed them. Probably the easiest to knit would be the hat, followed by the headband, then the gloves, fingerless gloves, and mittens, with the cowl coming in as an advanced project. The cowl requires enough knitting that it almost qualifies as a full sweater as far as the amount of work it requires, and you will need to steek it. So if you're super new to Fair Isle, maybe opt for the hat, but if you've done it before, any of the others would be a good next step. And if you already know and love Fair Isle knitting, just pick whichever one you love best. Photos and links to the patterns will be in the show notes. The main discussion and tracking and such for the knit along will happen on the Purl Together Ravelry group, so look for Purl Together in the groups area over there and join up. At this point, I can confirm that we have some cast-on prizes and a generous prize for one of the people who finishes. There will also be a weekly prize for those who post their progress on the Ravelry group, and I've had a few other makers contact me about donating prizes that will be awarded at the end as well. If you are interested in donating something, let me know. We'll have details about the prizes for you before the start of the knit along. Now, I know I just threw a whole lot of go here, go there at you. Before the giveaway starts, we will provide you with a link that will take you to a website that will walk you through all the places to go and subscribe and follow and buy patterns and such. We are still working on some more prizes and hopefully some coupon codes for buying yarn and such, so just hold tight for now and know that this is all coming, but we want to give you a chance to get through the holidays before you have to act on anything. I would suggest that you go ahead and join the Purl Together and I Thought I Knew How Ravelry groups and subscribe to both accounts on YouTube. Also, if you're on my mailing list, I'll keep you informed on all of this. I am so excited to be co-hosting my first knit along. This is going to be a great time. That said, I'm going to call this a show. Americans at home or abroad, enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday this week. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you would like to contact me, you can email me at ann@familypodcasts.com. That's Ann with an E at familypodcasts.com. I'm on Ravelry, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube as I Thought I Knew How. If it's a place that allows you to put spaces between the words, then there are spaces between the words. Otherwise, it's all one word. The Facebook and Ravelry groups are both called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. I'm on Twitter as @Thought I Knew How. The website for the show is ithoughtIKnewHow.familypodcasts.com. There you will find the show notes for each episode. Every now and then I post a blog post there too. Please consider helping fund the podcast by giving Drops Detergent a try. There will be a link in the show notes for that. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.